A few news articles that I thought were fun. Um, I'll skip that one for a little while. So this is pretty amazing. Simple logical extension often does not work in politics. People frequently do not carry things to their logical conclusions, but Ron Johnson has done this. The the Republicans have decided that somehow it is necessary to resist the COVID vaccine, so it's having enormous effects. And now they're moving not only to that, but all vaccines. Ron Johnson now wants to end all vaccine mandates, like all the ones that children have to take to go to school, like polio and mumps and rubella. And they showed that the number of Republicans that think parents should be required to vaccinate their children has fallen precipitously in 1 year. This is why it is, for decades, political science is going to study this. The United States used to be one kind of country before Trump, and Donald Trump changed it into a very different country to an amazing extent. And he did it by changing Republicans into like a whole standard deviation to the right, where the ideas that used to be insane in the Republican Party are now in the mainstream. And resisting vaccines is now a mark of membership in their tribe. So it's just amazing and horrifying, and I don't know where it's going to end. So this is pretty amazing. ExpressVPN and other VPNs have all been bought up by this distributor, Cape, and Cape has a renamed malware producer. They used to produce malware that infects machines and makes ads pop up, and they changed their name from Crossrider and bought all the VPNs, and then they bought a bunch of VPN review sites and gave themselves fake good reviews. And I'm hearing ExpressVPN ads everywhere. So it's pretty shocking. Of course, like cryptocurrency companies, security companies do tend to just be a bad lot, like Malwarebytes. I always tell everybody with a Mac to get Malwarebytes off their Mac. As far as I can tell, Malwarebytes is just malware, and you don't want it on your Mac. Well, actually, maybe I'm mixing things up. No, that's MBAM, Malwarebytes Anti-Malware. That's a good product, MBAM. There's something else people put on their Mac. I don't think it's Malwarebytes. That's true. So I guess that's there. I understand. Malwarebytes is a good company. Anyway, this company seems to be a malware company that has gone straight a little bit. I remember one of my students worked for a malware company in San Francisco that made browser extensions that would do nasty things. And he told me he worked there for a couple of years, and the browser extensions were doing nastier and nastier things until they asked him to write a browser extension that would intercept HTTPS to steal passwords from all the secure websites he went to in the browser, and that's when he quit. That was a company starting with C, I forget the name, one of the major malware products for Windows maybe about 8 years ago. It's, anyway, there's an awful lot of shady companies that do things that may or may not be illegal, but they get shadier and shadier. So I heard this on Steve Gibson's podcast, which you should all be listening to, by the way, Security Now, the most famous long-running security podcast. And he's picking on Microsoft a lot lately because they won't let you put Windows 11 on an ordinary machine that's running Windows 10, and for not the slightest good reason. There is nothing you need that new hardware for that matters. And now they pretty much admitted it. They have an official registry key you can put in your Windows 10 to allow upgrades with unsupported TPM or CPU, and then it will install on any machine that runs Windows 10. So Microsoft has been pretending for months that you must go buy a new machine to get Windows 11, and now they seem to be just knocking it off. And it's not clear why. They feel like they want to push a new generation of hardware out there by just lying to people, but that's clearly what they're doing. Windows 11 will run fine. I would not get Windows 11 at all, by the way. I'm planning to make a virtual machine of it so people can use it in my malware analysis class, but it is extremely obvious that Windows 11 is one of Microsoft's bad versions that was rushed out in a hurry, that is all full of nasty bugs, and there's no reason to do it unless you are an enthusiast or you want to study Windows like I do, like you might study a bug or something. It's probably fine. I'm not planning to actually use it and live on it. I'm planning to use it as a target, but it's not a very good version of Windows. And certainly you're better off staying with Windows 10 for a while if you just want your machine to actually work. So this thing has been very popular in the last several years, is finding out how much traffic comes out of a phone when you're not doing anything. And these guys found many versions of Android and found that most of them just send all kinds of information about you all over the place, except for one called EOS, which is a privacy version of Android. And it doesn't send any information to anybody when it's just sitting there doing nothing, which is pretty amazing. So anyway, the rest of these all are constantly reporting home to all kinds of companies. And I remember when Windows 8 came out, I think people found the same thing for Windows 8. And, it's true of most of your devices. They have a steady stream of data going all over the place. And people are increasingly in the mood to check that out and get upset about it. So the U.S. military, as you know, has a vaccine mandate now. They must all get the vaccine. And the Pope said it was perfectly fine to take the vaccine, even though it has an extremely peripheral connection to abortion, like almost every medical drug. There was an aborted fetus decades ago that started a line of human cells, and they've cultivated that line of human cells, and they use it to test drugs. So almost every drug I think aspirin and everything, has been tested against that cell. So if you were to say that you cannot have the slightest connection to one that had an abortion ever, then you might want to abstain from all those drugs. But even the Pope said this is fine, that's not a strong enough connection, the vaccine is important and you should take it. But now the Archbishop in charge of the U.S. military has said people can refuse the vaccine because they're Catholic. So we'll see where this goes. I think the there is no fetal tissue in aspirin. It's just that part of the standard testing procedure to test any drug involves using some of these cultivated cells. Just like testing any drug involves testing it in animals, like rabbits and rats and stuff. It's just part of the standard medical tests. So if you want to somehow pretend that nothing in the chain of events leading to this ever had anything to do with an abortion, you can try that. This reminds me of the Dalai Lama. They asked the Dalai Lama, and they said, what is this thing about being vegetarian? And he said, well, even my bowl of rice and vegetables has little tiny organisms in there that have been killed to make this bowl, so you can never be perfectly pure. You just have to do the best you can. And that's why there's some versions of Buddhists where somebody will walk ahead of you to sweep all the bugs off the sidewalk so you don't accidentally step on one. You have to decide, how pure are you anyway? How free of sin do you want to be? Yeah. Anyway, the fact is, freedom of religion, right, is guaranteed in the Constitution. So it's generally regarded that if you have a legitimate religious objection, you can be exempt from otherwise mandatory duties like military service and probably vaccination and stuff like that. There's a lot of these things. Like Jehovah's Witnesses don't want to get blood transfusions, they don't want to let their kids get blood transfusions, and all these edge cases end up going up to the courts. And it's a tough one. When you have a well-established religious tradition that coincides with a really important medical need for the community, then there's a battle. Anyway, so the robot dogs we've all been laughing at for about a decade, getting better and better. Now they've finally made versions of the robot dogs with guns, which was, of course, the plan all along, in case anybody thought they were just making toys to play with. Since the 60s, the world of computer science has been getting money from grants by saying we are going to make robot soldiers, so you don't have to send our young men and now young women off to die. You can send robots with guns to go do the fighting. That is a big crowd pleaser. A lot of people want that. So it's definitely coming. Just like we have armed drones, we're going to have armed walking robots with guns and stuff. Anyway, those prototypes are becoming visible. Well, that's the idea. No more human death, but of course, then the other guys will have drones and you have bombs, But the idea is, certainly anything to make your soldiers safer is a big seller. I mean, better armor, better planes, Yeah, I'm all for it, Just like you should be sending drones to defuse a bomb or drones to dig coal out of a mine that's going to collapse, This is a good idea. Use machines to do things that are dangerous that you really don't want humans to have to do. So I've always wondered how much you could really get from solar, and apparently they say if you just put solar panels like this on half the roofs in the world, that would be enough to power the entire planet. So that's pretty impressive. I mean, you might be able to get there. I know I was very impressed when they had the cold snap and the power failed in Texas, and they said that 20% of Texas is currently running on renewables, like wind. I didn't know it was that significant yet. So that's very hopeful, because we really have to stop burning fossil fuels in a hurry. And apparently, we're close enough that we could ramp up the renewables and get enough power. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, of course, using machines in war is not going to mean no human death, because obviously the whole point of war is you're going to kill somebody. But, yeah, solar in Texas and wind in Texas, apparently, to a large extent. So one big way to make medical advances is to try drugs that have already been approved for safety for some other purpose and see if they have a second use. This is a whole bunch of research communities do this, and now they found a drug 50 years old, already approved for some other purpose, which they say appears to decrease the rate of progress of Alzheimer's. So it's a small study and has to be reproduced. One great thing about this is you don't have to go through the usual thing. For first you have to test it in animals, then you have to test it in a group of people just for safety, then for efficacy, and it's several years. But if you take a drug that's already approved for use in humans, then you're just using it for a different purpose off-label, and then you skip over a lot of the testing stages because you already know it's okay. Like, for example, that one everyone's yelling about, ivermectin. Ivermectin is already approved for something like lice. So it's already approved for use in humans. The only huge argument is, does it actually prevent COVID? And apparently not, but it's not like it's going to kill you or anything, so, it's much easier to take a drug that's already approved. And so this is the first vape product in America that's approved for sale. I remember when all my students were vaping and everything, maybe 6 years ago, and I thought it was great. I thought it's obviously this vapor is going to be harmless, and it's got to beat smoking, and it's clearly much healthier. Smoking is incredibly dangerous. And I said, this is great, but it turned out that the vaping was not harmless at all because of impurities in it or something. A bunch of people got horrible diseases from the vaping. But apparently they've now found a product that they've approved. And I think it's the case that if the product was actually just like pure nicotine and water and some kind of flavor, in fact, it wouldn't hurt you. It's just that some of them had some terrible contamination. Anyway, so this was pretty interesting. People have been saying you shouldn't bother taking the SAT and ACT. It doesn't prove anything. And these guys went and calculated your income, income distribution by ACT score, I think a few years afterwards, and red is more money and light blue is less money, and this is the ACT score here. So one thing, ACT score has been known, ACT and SAT have been known for years to predict your grade in school. The higher you score on that test, the higher you're likely to score on the tests in school, but apparently now you can also see the higher you score on that test, the more likely you are to make more money. So that's kind of the point of vocational education, like what you're taking right now. You take a course, you do well in the course. The whole idea is now you are better prepared to get a job, get a raise, and move up in the world. That's the idea, and apparently there is considerable evidence that it's true. And this is the one I saved till now to reach the official cryptocurrency part of the class. I just added these to the pictures. Yan, who is a very funny character on Twitter, somebody sent her, there's a children's book about a rabbit who goes back in time to medieval Europe to tell everybody about the blockchain. So I'm from the future in the blockchain of archival information. And he explained everything about mutual distributed ledgers over supper. And there's not a poor gene. They can be educated and operate using blockchain just as we can. All poverty can be ended by the blockchain. That's a big one. And the Duke de Money commissioned a charming book of hours for several possible blockchain applications using smart ledgers. So anyway, this is the Sphinxing rabbit. So anyway, I think that's great. I added a bunch of these to my cryptocurrency joke images on the crypto page. That's what you need, blockchain. You don't need steel or anything or penicillin or anything. No, what you guys need is blockchain. Anyway, all right, so yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right.